And so we were on 13th and Carson is where I stopped and picked him up at, which is not far. It's right in the center of downtown, pretty much. And I pick him up and we're driving home, and he offers to buy me some cheeseburgers for the ride. He didn't have much gas money, and I already had a full tank anyway. But I was hungry, so I was like, yeah, let's stop at Wendy's. And we're pulling in, and next thing you know, we're being pulled over. We're on 16th and Emerson. And 16th is not the same sort of nightlife that Colfax is. Very, very quiet. A lot of the area's surrounding environment is big Victorian homes that have been renovated into law offices, rehabilitation clinics. There are brand new condominiums. So what I'm getting at is that there was zero activity happening at 12:30 in the morning on 16th and Emerson. One lonely street light that we managed to park under to increase our surrounding visibility. I didn't know much about interaction with law enforcement, but I knew it was a good idea to keep things as visible as possible. So I tried to stop under the street light. And Officer Ricky Nixon comes to my driver's window and says, he goes to the usual spiel, do you know why I'm stopping you, why I pulled you over? And I said, no, I have no idea, please tell me. And he explains that I made an illegal left turn coming from Colfax. And thinking to myself, Colfax is riddled with no left turn signs. It's a possibility. I made an illegal left turn. So I said, no, okay, well, we're moving through the motions. I reached for my license and I realized that my wallet's at the house. So I explained to the officer, I don't have an ID to show you. I can give you a social. I don't have any outstanding traffic violations, plus my registration and insurance are up to date. I don't have any warrants. Trying to comply as much as possible. So then he comes around and Addison is sitting in my passenger seat. He asks Addison some of the same questions, gives him his ID, and he goes back to his squad car. And 16th and Emerson, to give you a little more of a visual of the area, is about a block, if that, from the District 6 police station. So we're parked on the corner of an intersection that I could have hit the parking lot of District 6 with a rock from where we were pulled over. Officer Nixon goes back to his car and he comes back, and there's just this unusual period of silence. It's just, we're questioning whether the turn was made, if it was illegal or what. And so he comes back and he says now he wants us to get out of the car. He says he can detect an aroma of marijuana coming from within the vehicle, and now he wants us to search. And so again, taking me back to my childhood, growing up in a home where we didn't have conversations about potentially negative interactions between black youth and law enforcement, potential negative racial profile incidents that could occur for being a black man in this society, being racially profiled, stereotypes, what those are, what those look like, how to combat those things. We didn't really have these kinds of conversations. When the race conversation came up, when I was done talking about it, that's where it would stop. So I'm pulling for things at this point. I'm thinking, well, do you have a warrant for the search of my car? And he's beginning to get aggressive. I told you to get out. So I step out of the car. He pats me down. He doesn't find anything. Doesn't put me in handcuffs. Tells me to go stand at the front of his squad car, which if we're parked right here, he's parked roughly 5, maybe 10 feet behind where I'm parked. Standing there, he comes around, he pulls Addison out of the car, and Addison has this bulging pill container full of weed in his breast pocket. So instead of trying to hide it, he just gives it up to the officer. Again, trying to be compliant as possible. He's placed in handcuffs and told to go sit down where I'm standing. At this point, another squad car arrived on the scene. Officer Randy Murr and Officer Tiffany Middleton joined Ricky Nixon at my car and tearing my car apart. And I'm standing here thinking that I am not in custody, I'm not being detained, I'm not even in handcuffs. And it should be okay, not knowing that you've already pat me down and I have no weapons on me. It should be okay for us to have a conversation as people. So I calmly put my arms out to the side and take a couple steps forward while I'm asking these officers, can I please see a warrant before you continue to just tear apart my car? And these officers, like a light switch, it was like, as soon as I said those words, as soon as I challenged their authority, they became angry. And Officer Randy Murray and Tiffany Middleton began to yell and scream and manufacture the situation that wasn't even in existence in the first place, stop yelling, stop, don't resist, you don't advance on us, all of these things. So Ricky Nixon slowly turns around and says to me in a very malicious voice, "You don't have a license," as if this was his justification to begin hitting me as hard as he could, repeatedly, over and over again in the face with a closed fist. Meanwhile, I have these other two officers on my arms, and they're twisting my limbs, they're doing all of these things, and Tiffany Middleton in the middle of all of this is all transpiring between these two cars, my car and the squad car, right next to the curb. Tiffany Middleton trips backwards, and instead of letting my arm go, I think she tried to brace herself, but what she did is she pulled me down and sandwiched me between her and these other two officers who are now both hitting me from behind. And I'm laying there between those two officers and Tiffany Middleton like this. I'm completely immobilized, except for movement in my neck. And I look up, and my gaze, she had been able to remove her police radio. My gaze was met with the butt end of the radio as she began to strike me over and over and over again. And so all I could do was I tried to tuck my head to prevent, the blows from making direct contact with my eyeball. And at this point, I hear an officer yell out, and I knew it was bad. I knew it was bad right away because after the first couple of times she had hit me, I knew blood was coming down my face. I could feel it. My eyes started to swell up, and I began to lose vision very fast. But I hear an officer yell out, "He's reaching for a gun. He's reaching for a gun." And this went out over their walkie-talkie, broadcasting this over the radio. So now we have a 19-year-old black male criminally attempting to disarm a police officer, as stated by one of their colleagues, and we're not even a block away from the police station. So a wave of officers came from this police station. Most of them came on foot, and the ones that did come in squad cars used their squad cars to block the intersections of 16th and Washington and 16th and Emerson. Washington is where the police station is, that's the next street down. But they did that so there would be no through traffic east or west, north or south. And this was like a mob style mentality. And I say that because as soon as the officers got there, they joined in the melee. And it became this mall of officers. Meanwhile, Addison's in the back screaming, "What the hell are you doing? Stop! Alex!" All of these. This is horrifying for him. He can't make sense of it. I can't make sense of it. And the next thing that I remember is being grabbed around the neck and hoisted backwards in this chokehold style position. Officer Middleton is removed from the altercation. I don't exactly know how she got out of there, but I remember as I'm gasping for air, Randy Murr, we later found out this was Randy Murr, but an officer removing a flashlight and beginning to smash me on the head over and over and over again. And I didn't know it was a flashlight until we read the discovery, but I could tell that it was an object. I could tell it was a metallic feeling, and I could tell that it was heavy. And at this point, I was thrown back to my face. In the criminal proceedings, Randy Murr couldn't even count how many times he had hit me with a flashlight. An unknown number of times is what ended up being used as language. But as I'm thrown back to my face, Tiffany Middleton's no longer underneath. There's a multitude of police there. I can't count them. I just see boobs and faces from my left eye. My right eye's fully closed at this point. And an officer shouts out, "If he doesn't calm down, just shoot him." So Officer Nixon takes out his service revolver. He puts it in my temple. He's pressing on it real hard. I can feel the steel, the pressure, cold just pressed up against the side of my head. I can feel the gun. I can see his hand on the handle, finger on the trigger, and I close my eyes. And at this point, I expected to be shot. And I lost consciousness. I lost consciousness only to wake up as I'm literally laying face down in the gutter, being rolled backwards out of the gutter between my passenger tire and the curb and drug backwards across the grass. They're dragging me across the grass. I'm fading in and out of consciousness. I can see police. They're tearing apart my car at this point. And there are officers laughing about what had happened. It was so business as usual for them. One officer was like, "You don't know how close you were to getting your fucking head blown off." Another officer said, "Where's that warrant now?" Just that's the mentality of the individuals who addressed me that evening. So as I'm laying there, they laid me on a police jacket, which actually later it accumulated so much blood it had to be preserved for evidence in the case moving forward. And as I'm laying there fading in and out of consciousness, somebody called the paramedics. So the paramedics wake me up, and I thought it was the police. First thing I said to them was, "Please don't hit me anymore. I honestly don't think I can take it." And Denver Health. I'm a paramedic. I said, why'd they beat me up? I didn't do anything wrong. She was just silent. She didn't have an answer for that, as to suggest that she may respond to these types of things frequently. So the next thing that I remember thinking was, I don't have insurance. I can't pay for this. I need you to leave. Actually, I don't want any treatment. So being 19 years old and being an adult, I'm able to tell the ambulance to go. So they're packing up and they're saying, he doesn't want treatment. Let's get out of here. And had I let them leave, that would have cost me my life, and I wouldn't be here today. And I know that because as soon as they were getting ready to leave, I stopped them and I said, I want to go to the hospital. I didn't know how bad it was. I knew there was blood everywhere. I couldn't see, and I needed time to start to process this. So handcuffed me. At this point, I've been criminally charged with felony intent to disarm a peace officer. I don't know this at the time, but this is what I'm charged with. So they load me onto the stretcher and handcuff me at the wrists, and handcuff me at the ankles, because, now I'm being charged with felony. And they load me into the ambulance and they send an accompanying officer with me to the hospital, and the paramedics are in the back and they're prepping all of these gauze and they're doing all these things, getting ready to begin these procedures, and I tell them, no, stop, wait, what are you doing? Do not clean me up or do anything to me until someone takes pictures of what's happened here. And bring these up. I know there was a quick flash at the end, but just so you can see, and these were later preserved, but as soon as I said that to her, I went into shock. My body got real cold, all the hair on my body stood up on end, and I started to shake, started to seize very violently. And it got to the point where the paramedic was like, if we don't do something, you're not going to make it. They put an oxygen mask on me and coached me in some breathing techniques, in and out, in and out. And it was enough to stabilize my vitals until we got to the hospital. And I denied an IV, and the accompanying officer made a statement. He said, oh, he can take a beating, but he's scared of needles. What a pussy. Meanwhile, while I'm bleeding out, bleeding to death on this stretcher, he still has the nerve to add insult to injury. We get to Denver Health, they wheel me through the emergency room entrance. I don't know why they wheeled me through the ER entrance, but as soon as they did, I started to yell. We had an entourage of police there waiting for us. But I started to yell, this is how Denver police treats black males after midnight. This is what can happen to youth in the streets of Denver after midnight. And they circled me. They circled me and they began to tell everybody in the waiting room, do not get involved, don't say anything, don't address us, or we'll arrest you for interference. Meanwhile, Addison has been taken to the District 6 police station, and he's being sat down, coerced into a false statement. We want you to write it how we tell you to write it, or we're going to do the same thing to you, and we're going to charge you with the same thing we charged your friend with. And having this unfold right in front of him, right there, oh, he was horrified. He was totally in shock.